Hello, today I wanted to show you 5 tools I use in Procreate all of the time and pretty essential to making a painting like this. I've used them all for this and I'll demonstrate while using this to use as a backdrop. Okay, so the first one is clipping mask, and you see this little arrow here. It means I have clipping mask turned on, and what it does is, let me show you. So I create a new layer. I'll paint something large, doesn't really matter what. So imagine that is a mountain or something, and then I want to paint highlights on top, or shadow section, sorry. So you can see I go out to the line and it's a bit tricky. So what I do is I always start with the base, and I create a new layer, then I tap it, then I create a clipping mask, so it'll conform to whatever's there. You can see this little arrow that tells you it's on, and then I can easily add the shadows or do whatever. So that one I use pretty much everywhere, and if you see my other videos, if you see this little arrow, it's because I'm doing it all over the place. Okay, so that's a useful one. Number 2 is the Freehand color fill tool. So create the click this selection box, selection item, whatever it's called, and then it'll probably be on automatic or something like that. Click the freehand. This will be off probably, so turn that on, and then on a new layer you can draw anything, and you need to hit this little gray dot to finish it. And so that's how I create lots of big shapes. Every time you do that, you have to turn it on and off again, which is a little bit annoying. And then I'll use clipper mask, like I said before, and then I'll use that tool again, and what means I don't have to stay in the lines, so it means I can make it very quick. Now I'll do that to create mountains and things like that. So it's used for these, and so I'll create a clipper mask and put the highlights over the top. Just makes you a lot quicker, so you don't have to be so accurate. Okay, so number 3 is how I did the sky, and create a new layer. And so this is for creating gradients. Again, I'll use that tool that I just showed you, and you can create a nice simple gradient by doing something like this. Oops. And then click the adjustments layer, click on Gaussian blur, and then drag it as much as you need to make the nice gradient. Now you can use this clipping mask again for anything, and it'll conform to what's below it. So you can see that gradient's gone into there. Not a great use of that, obviously, but you can turn it back off. But you could put it somewhere else, like down the bottom, and then clipper mask, and then it'll turn that into like a gradient. So that's a good one. So like I said, that's done for the sky and anything I want to be smooth, basically. There's not many smooth things in here actually, but that's basically what it is. Okay, so the next one is adjusting colors. So if we look at, so say we take this one, which is the sky, highlights, so this section. Now if you go to adjustments, hue, saturation, brightness, you can basically change the color of anything. And I use this a lot. If my colors are not saturated enough or anything, I'd use it to boost them or desaturate or whatever. So I'm usually desaturating and make it brighter or darker. I'm generally not, I mean, I might change the color a tiny bit, but if you go too often, then it goes a bit crazy. So you can undo that and get it back to normal. So actually it was probably looked a bit better saturated more. So okay, the next one I use a little bit, not a great deal, is the smudge tool, which is fairly obvious to use. I'm using technical pen here, it doesn't really matter. Let's create another layer, and let's so you can use this to smooth things out, basically. So say I want a gradient between green and blue, you can smooth it out. But one thing to be careful of with the smudge tool is you have to pick a brush as well. Now, most of the time I'm using smudge for smoothing, but you don't have to. You can actually use it to make grass and things. So, but if you use a soft brush in the airbrush, and make sure it's a decent size, and usually I bring the opacity down. Opacity is kind of a weird name for the smooth and for the smudge tool. It's not exactly opacity, it's just how powerful the smudge is going to be. If it's too powerful, it'll do crazy things and it'll be useless. So there we go. We've got a nice smooth gradient using the smudge instead. Now, you can't use the Gaussian blur all the time because this gives you more accuracy. But you can also use Smudge tool if you pick something, pick a hard brush, like the technical pen, turn the opacity way up, and you can push it a lot more. It's a little bit tricky still. My brush is a bit too small, but you can push it. That's quite useful sometimes. Okay, so that was my 5 tips for Procreate tools that I use all the time. If you found them useful, check out my other videos where I talk about these paintings in more detail and how I did them. Thanks for watching.